The letter slid under my door like a verdict. We received your request to change your address to Sunset Pines Assisted Living. I hadn't requested anything except my seed catalog and a refill for my knee. 10 minutes later, the bank called. Do you want your niece added as an authorized signer? No, I did not. They said she claimed power of attorney. She didn't have it. That's when I realized this wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. I held the letter to the light, washed my hands like my mother taught me, and made 3 calls to my banker, to legal aid, and to the locksmith. If someone thought I was easy to move, they'd picked the wrong address. At dawn, my doorbell camera caught a hooded figure sliding another card into my mailbox. I recognized the stride before my brain admitted it. I saved the clip. On Sunday, I set coffee, banana bread, and my phone on the table. My niece arrived with the sales director and a clipboard. They smiled. They said amenities. They said safety. I hit record. Then I showed the banker's paperwork with the fake signature. Then the video from my porch. And then there was a knock at the door, the county deputy holding a packet with my name and the word protection. People think aging means losing control. Here's what it really means: learning which door to lock, which number to dial, and when to press record. If you've ever felt someone planning your life without your consent, stay with me. This is how I kept my house and my name exactly where they belong. The county library has carpet that muffles the sound of librarians' shoes, and a row of humming computers, and a wall of flyers that tell the whole story of a place if you stand there long enough. Girl Scout cookies in March. Pancake breakfast at the firehouse. Senior Law Project, Thursdays free. The Senior Law Project flyer was a little crooked, the push pin wearing a tired halo and to the cork. It said, "Drop in, no appointment necessary." Mr. Patel had hair the same elegant gray as the frame of his glasses, and hands that tapped gently when he listened, like fingers tapping out an old song on a tabletop. He said, "Show me exactly what you have." I handed him the Sunset Pines letter, the list of pills I took, the discharge instructions from my surgeon, my driver's license, and because I am who I am, my church directory. He read the letter. He nodded when I told him about Denise. He asked what exactly I'd signed when I came home groggy in a soft pair of sweatpants I didn't remember buying. I said they were insurance forms. Kelsey had them in a folder. I'd fallen asleep with ice wrapped like a baby around my knee. She said we had to sign a few things while I was still comfortable. Did you sign a durable power of attorney? I signed whatever page she put in front of me. The shame in my voice scraped my teeth on the way out. I am not a fool, but I had been sleepy and trusting and grateful for a child who carried my laundry basket and made broth from a box. He sorted the stack, pulled out a page that said placement recommendation, something called preference statement, a line where my name looped in the way it does when I'm on automatic pilot. It was not power of attorney. It was not legally binding. I wanted to cry anyway. There it was, my name in blue ink under a paragraph about care needs, a sentence about consulting with family. I always like to tell the truth even when it doesn't serve me. I had signed something I should have read, and the evidence was right there, neat as pie. Here's the good news, he said. You didn't give away your financial authority. Not yet. We're going to revoke anything that even smells like authority in writing, properly witnessed. We'll lock down your bank with confirmation protocols. And Miss Alvarez, change your locks today. It's a strange thing having your own doorknob feel like a liability. After the library, I went to Ace Hardware and bought 2 deadbolts and joked with the kid at the register that I like to keep out the raccoons. He had a face so earnest, I wanted to hand him a casserole. I called the locksmith. Then I called my neighbor Joni, who used to be a school secretary and who can tell you the good gossip without a single unkind word. "You want company while they drill?" she asked. "I want meatloaf, which in our neighborhood is the same thing." We made meatloaf and mashed potatoes in my kitchen while the locksmith's drill sounded like a dentist on the other side of the door. I handed Joni the Sunset Pines letter. She read it and left a smudge of flour on the top corner. She said, "I don't like the smell of this, and I love things that smell like butter." The doorbell camera I installed last year because my nephew kept getting packages stolen blinked its little blue eye at us. We waved at it like fools and then sat on stools and made a list. The list included things like call Denise, call Mr. Patel tomorrow, call Verizon, and hide the spare house key in a location known only to a committee of 2. The next morning, a green USPS confirmation card appeared in my mailbox again. My stomach crawled into my throat. I took a picture of it on my kitchen table because I have learned, in spite of being a teacher and a woman who values chalkboard civility and a tidy snack drawer, that sometimes you need to collect your own receipts. I checked the footage from the doorbell cam at 5:42 a.m. A hooded figure jogged up my driveway, mail in hand, slipped something into my mailbox, and jogged away. The someone had a stride I recognized before my brain admitted it.
I saved the clip. Then I made oatmeal and ate 3 bites and wanted to hurl it into the sink. While the oatmeal sat and sulked, I called the post office. A man named Harris in a back room that sounded both busy and bored asked me to step through what had happened, and when I got to the part where a stranger, my niece, was intercepting my mail without my consent, his voice changed. Mail theft is a federal crime. Mail is not a family inheritance you get to preview. He told me to fill out a form online and said the Postal Inspection Service took changes of address seriously. I believed him. His voice had the shape of someone who has caught a lot of people who thought they were smarter than paper. At church, I found Pastor Lorraine in the fellowship hall, cutting slices of sheet cake like they were sacramental. I told her the short version, which felt like telling it with the wrong hand. She has the kind of face you can trust with your worst. She put down the knife and took my hand, which is usually the moment a person like me starts to cry. This time I didn't. This time I felt the clean, taut line of anger I'd been avoiding since my knee mended and my helpers kept rearranging my drawers. "I think you should have people around when you talk to Kelsey about this," she said. "And I know 2 women who can be around while pretending to gossip about choir music." The women were her and Joni. Church women are an army in comfortable shoes. I texted Kelsey to come for brunch on Sunday. I said I was making banana bread. She sent a row of hearts. She said she'd bring a casserole because she has a sense of humor that thinks a casserole absolves. "Who else is on our bench?" Joni asked. "Denise," I said, and texted her. She said she'd like to drop off a Tupperware, which is bank speak for "I will bring documents and this will look like a normal Sunday visit." I also called Mr. Patel. He said he'd draft a revocation letter for anything I had inadvertently signed, and that he'd write it in font so clear even a judge from the 1960s would sigh of relief. He said he couldn't be there Sunday because he spent weekends visiting his mother, but he reminded me to record the conversation if I felt comfortable. In Ohio, he said, you can record your own conversations as a party to them. Make sure your phone battery is charged. My phone was charged. My battery was too. When Kelsey arrived, she brought a man in a navy sport coat and a clipboard and the breathless confidence of a person who pre-orders her own success. She said, "This is Evan, the sales director from Sunset Pines. He can answer your questions." I set out plates and poured coffee and smiled so sweet my molars hurt. I had been the kind of aunt who made Halloween costumes and kissed scraped knees and clapped in high school bleachers until my hands stung, and I wanted to remember that girl and stand her next to the woman who had rerouted my mail. "Before we get started," I said, setting my phone on the table, "I'd just like to record important conversations so I don't forget anything. You know how brains are at my age." "Aunt Ruth," she said, aiming for light, landing on condescension, "you're 64, not 90. I turned the red circle on my phone. "All the same." Evan opened his folder. "So," he said, as if I'd just won a game show prize, "our community fee is normally $3,000, but I can have that waived today if we sign. The studio is spacious and centrally located by the elevators, which is handy after a knee replacement. We have chef-prepared meals and daily activities, billiards, trivia, book club." He looked around my living room and made a little check mark on a paper, the kind of gesture that reduces a home to a line item. My living room has a crocheted blanket that took me 2 winters to finish, and a picture of my late husband in his army uniform, and a houseplant I rooted from a cutting 30 years ago. It is not a lobby. Kelsey took out a folder. Her nails were painted the color of expensive candy. She said, "We'll need your license, Aunt Ruth, and your Medicare card, and your list of prescriptions. Evan, should we put her on the fall monitor plan? She's a little wobbly." My neighbor Joni knocked, let herself in with a quick synchronized, "Just us," and set a bag of oranges on the counter. "For vitamin C," she said, too brightly. "Oh," I said, "you know my niece, Kelsey?" "Of course," Joni said. "We see her car parked at all hours." Pastor Lorraine came next, with a square of brownies covered in foil. She set them down and very clearly eyed the man with the clipboard. "And who might you be?" she asked, a question that in a different mouth would have been small talk, but in hers carried the weight of scripture. "Evan," he said, extending a hand, "Sunset Pines. This is a home, and we don't sell things in it without coffee first." I poured coffee, I passed banana bread, and then Denise stopped by for her Tupperware, which is the kind of white lie that deposits a deposit in a different bank entirely. She held up a page. "I brought a copy of the authorized signer request," she said, neutral as a bowl. On the page, my name, my account number, and a signature that looked like mine until it didn't. Mine has a swoop. This one had a choke. Kelsey smiled at Denise as if they were at a brunch for young professionals. There must be some misunderstanding. "And this," I said, swiping my phone to the doorbell cam footage. We all watched Kelsey in a hood at dawn, sliding a card into my mailbox like a magician palming a coin. She took a little step backward when the clip ended, tiny, but I saw it. Evan watched the video twice and then adjusted his tie the way men do when a suit won't protect them. The room held its breath. The knock on the door this time was brisk and official, the kind of knock that rearranges a conversation. Deputy Riley from the county sheriff's office stepped into my living room, his hat tucked respectfully under his arm. He is the type who seems born kind and then practiced it. "Miss Alvarez," he said, and I stood and lifted my chin like a citizen in a civics textbook. He turned to my niece. "Kelsey Hart?" Kelsey blinked. "Yes?"
He handed her a packet. "This is a temporary protection order and a notice to cease any attempts to change Ms. Alvarez's address or access her finances. All communication about care needs to go through Ms. Alvarez's counsel. Any further attempts may be charged as elder financial exploitation." Her mouth opened and closed. "You called the police on me?" "I called the police on what you did," I said. And it was the first time I felt the sweetness of anger without any of the sugar. "Kelsey, love is not a shortcut to my checkbook." Evan cleared his throat. I think we'll reschedule, he said, gathering his folder and not meeting anyone's eyes. He backed toward the door like a man leaving a room he'd mistakenly entered at a party, not the kitchen, not his people. Kelsey's chin trembled, the same chin that used to quiver when she scraped her knee on the playground and reached for me. Something in my chest tried to leap to her defense, the old reflex that turns women into soft landing pads for everybody else's hard choices. I put my hand on the back of a chair instead. Boundaries are a muscle. You work them and they hold. I was helping, she said. You don't even drive on the interstate anymore. I don't like the interstate. I like the lane on the right with the truckers who listen to classic rock and the PTA mothers who've learned to merge. That doesn't mean I belong in a studio apartment where someone knocks before they come to make sure I didn't fall between breakfast and lunch. I wanted you to be safe. Safe for whom? I asked. It came out softer than I felt. Safe for me or safe for your calendar? Because they're not the same thing, and you know it. Deputy Riley left after shaking my hand and leaving me a card with a number on it in case anyone got creative again. When the door shut and the lamp hummed, the house exhaled. Kelsey said she needed air and walked out to her car. She didn't slam the door, for which I was grateful. Later, I would be grateful for that tiny mercy all over again, that she still knows how to leave something unbroken. Evan went with her and didn't look back. Denise put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed once. Joni opened the foil on the brownies. Pastor Lorraine sat down and said, "Let's pray, then let's eat, because both are necessary." We prayed the kind of prayer I believe God invented for kitchen tables, the kind where you thank God for seeing what people do in the dark and you ask Him to let you keep the house you paid for with a job your knees still remember. Then we ate brownies at 11 in the morning because sometimes you do what you must. 3 weeks later, I sat on a hard wooden bench in the county courthouse under a portrait of a judge whose wig looked like a small sheep. Kelsey had filed a petition for emergency guardianship. The packet said things like concern and confusion and risk. The packet mentioned my knee, my age, my reluctance to drive far. It was written with the kind of careful, condescending charity that makes you feel like a child who has mixed up the alphabet. I wanted to tear it in half and also frame it for the day I might forget how sneaky a pretty word can be. Mr. Patel sat beside me with his neat stack of exhibits, which is the kind of phrase that appears only in court and scrapbooking. Exhibit A, the doorbell cam footage. Exhibit B, bank documentation of an attempted addition of an authorized signer without consent. Exhibit C, the letter from the post office and the second letter and the recorded voicemail from Sunset Pines. Your niece said as power of attorney, a thing she didn't have. Kelsey sat with an attorney in a suit that looked rented and a face that practiced sincerity in the mirror. She wore a dove-gray cardigan that made her eyes look pale and wide. A sliver of me wanted to bring her water, which is how slivers grow into pokers you stab yourself with. Her lawyer stood and said words like safety, best interest, declining functionality. He said cognitive decline with the kind of ease that comes from not knowing my brain carries 100 first graders you names for decades and remembers which ones hated long division and which ones liked crayons sorted by tint. Mr. Patel stood and said, Miss Alvarez drove herself here today. She planned and executed a support network that would be the envy of any social worker. She revoked any ambiguity in prior paperwork. She is wry, capable, and in full command of the facts, which made me want to both cry and bake him a pie. The judge leaned forward and looked over his glasses at Kelsey. Miss Hart, did you attempt to move Miss Alvarez without her consent? Kelsey's lower lip trembled. I just wanted what's best. She's alone. I am not alone, I said too loudly, which in a courtroom is always too loud. I am unmarried and my husband is dead, but I am not alone." "You will address the court through counsel," the judge said gently. And something about his voice said he had a mother too and was not immune to the indignities of overt help. He turned to Kelsey again. "Did you submit a change of address to the U.S. Postal Service?" She swallowed. "I thought it would be easier to manage her mail." He slid the doorbell cam still onto the bench in front of him, the one where she'd pulled up her hood at dawn. He tapped it with a pen like a metronome. "Petition denied," he said. "Miss Hart, any further attempts to alter Miss Alvarez's affairs without consent or proper legal authority will be considered exploitation and prosecuted. You will have no contact regarding care or finances unless invited. We are dismissed." When you feel relief in your body at my age, it's like a curtain lifts off your shoulders. We stood and shuffled, the smell of old wood and lemon pledge and the faint burnt scent of courthouse coffee rising like a weather report. Outside, the sky looked like somebody had washed it, blue, scrubbed clean. Joni hugged me so tight my ribs squeaked. Denise texted me before I could get to my car. "We'll keep extra eyes on everything. You're safe with us." Pastor Lorraine met us at the Bluebird Diner, where the waitress refills coffee without asking and the pie sits in domes like trophies. I ordered blueberry, warmed with vanilla ice cream, which is the kind of lunch that says, "I nearly got erased today and I will re-ink myself with sweetness." The Bluebird is the sort of place where everything is friend-shaped. The butter pats come wrapped in foil with tiny chickens on them. The salt shakers are glass. The older couple in the corner came every Wednesday after water aerobics for a BLT and the crossword. You can tell people are steady by the way they fold napkins in their lap. "I am so angry," I said, once the sugar hit my tongue and the shaking stopped. "Not confused, not fragile. Angry." "Good," Joni said, stabbing her pie with the kind of precision that solves problems in an office. "Anger is the body's burglar alarm. It doesn't mean you're violent. It means someone tried your door and you heard it." "Anger is a messenger. It tells you something valuable is at stake. Let's listen to it and build a porch light." I didn't know exactly what she meant then, but I know now, months later, sitting on my porch and watching the street lights come on one by one, that a porch light is not a beacon to invite just anyone in. It is a boundary, too. It says, "This is my house. If you are lost, I can help you find your way. If you are here to take something that isn't yours, I can see you." In the weeks that followed, my life took on a practical shape, the way it does after a flood when you start putting things back where they belong. I went to First Federal. Denise had a list. We put verbal passwords on the account and confirmed that any addition of a signer required me in person with ID in good light. We set up text alerts. She gave me a little card to carry in my wallet that said, "Call Denise directly." I put it behind my library card where I knew I would see it. I called the credit bureaus with Mr. Patel's letter in my lap and put a freeze on everything. A young man named Terry at the cable company tried to sell me a sports package, and I told him, "My niece is trying to sell me into an amenities-rich lifestyle. Do not test me." And he put a note on the account that nobody but me could change anything. Verizon made me recite my first grade teacher's name and then the name of my first pet. And I laughed when I said Ginger Snap because that cat hated everybody but me. Passwords came out of hiding. I wrote them down on a sheet of paper only I can find, looked at it, then wrote them again in a place nobody would think to look, that I am not telling you because you might be the internet. I met a new attorney for estate planning because the man we used when my husband died retired to Florida to fish, and I don't trust anyone who likes humidity that much. The new attorney was a woman who explained things without explaining me. We set up a living trust. I put the house into it, not to Kelsey or anyone else, but to the Maple Glen Public Schools Foundation to pay off lunch debt for kids whose parents got to the end of the month before the end of their relief. The rest goes to scholarships for girls who want to be mechanics and bus drivers, because the world runs on people who learn to keep wheels on the road. I didn't tell any of this to Facebook. I told my pastor and my attorney and the women who keep my secrets in Tupperware. There were quiet things too. I went to the senior center on Thursday nights and learned mime dancing from a man named Earl who wears Hawaiian shirts year-round and calls the steps with lungs that sound like a trumpet. I planted tomatoes because tomatoes are proof that waiting is not the same as doing nothing. I bought a red folding chair and started showing up at Little League games, even though I didn't know a single child out there, because there is something holy about clapping for kids who look up at a grandstand and see a world that approves. I cleaned out a closet and found the T-shirt from the year my students decorated the class with handprints and called me Miss A, and it still smelled faintly like tempera paint and hope. Sometimes I breathed and my body felt like a house that someone had been sneaking into for months and then finally locked. I slept. I wrote no on a sticky note and put it on my refrigerator alongside buy coffee filters and return library book. I left it there for a while. I wanted to get used to what it looked like next to my grocery list, the ordinary holy of refusal. 2 months after the courthouse, Kelsey showed up on my porch at dusk. No clipboard, no lipstick. Just a girl whose mother, the sister I loved and wanted to strangle in equal measure, had left town when she was 12 and never managed to send a birthday card on time again. Kelsey was the kind of child who learned to tie her shoes on her own because nobody had the patience to sit with her, and I had sat with her until she could loop and pull like a pro. My instincts are complicated like that. They love the child and they do not trust the adult she brought to my house. "Aunt Ruth," she said. Her voice had none of the high gloss. It sounded tired. "I lost my job. Evan said the video made them nervous. I'm looking for something else. I know I made mistakes. Can we talk?" I cracked the door, but kept the chain on out of habit and out of practice. She looked at the chain. You could see her add it to the story she was writing in her head, that I was paranoid now, that someone had put ideas in my mind, that I was not myself. I am myself. Myself changed. "I'm not punishing you," I said. "I'm protecting me." "I can change," she said. "I hope you do," I said. "For you, not so you can get at my house keys." She looked at the wreath on my door, a circle of silk flowers I got on sale in March. "Can I come by next week?" "Send me proof you're in therapy. Send me a pay stub from a job that doesn't touch senior care. If you're stable for 6 months, we can have coffee on the porch. Not inside." She swallowed. 6 months is a long time. "Not compared to the time it takes to rebuild trust," I said. "Not compared to how long it would take me to forgive myself if I let you undo all the work I did to keep my own name on my door." Tears gathered at her lashes. They looked like the ones from junior varsity soccer games when she tripped over her own feet and laughed it off. It would be easier to open the door and fold her in. Easier for a minute, then harder forever. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know," I answered. I closed the door gently because slamming has never made me feel stronger. I stood there and listened to her steps fade down the porch, then the car door, then silence. I stood a long time after that. I prayed, not for justice or vengeance, but for rightness, which is a small, steady word you can hold in your mouth when other words feel like weapons. Every so often she texts a link to a job she's applied for, a
picture of a therapist card on a neutral office table, as if therapy can be verified by the beige of someone's waiting room. I tell her I'm glad. I don't ask to see receipts. If she stays steady, we will drink coffee on the porch in November, under the cheap blanket I keep draped on the back of the sling. If not, then we won't. Boundaries are not ultimatums. They are weather forecasts. If it rains, bring an umbrella. If you don't, you get wet. After the dust settled, after my front yard grew the kind of grass that makes the HOA send you nice letters, I did something I needed to do because no one had done it for me. I wrote a letter to myself. Not a letter for now, though I read it, but a letter for whatever day some well-meaning person looks at me and sees a project. I put it in the drawer with the bills and the tape and the scissors that never seem to be where you left them. It says, Ruth, if someone tries to move you anywhere without your clear yes, you will call Denise, you will call Mr. Patel, you will call Joni, you will call Pastor Lorraine. You will not let anyone tell you this is easier, when easier means for someone else. If your knee hurts and you drop a mug, you will sweep it up and sit down and drink water and thank your body for telling you its truth. If you forget a name, you will laugh and say, it's in here somewhere. If a person with paperwork and a clipboard looks at your couch like it is a piece of outdated furniture and not the place where you ate soup when the flu took your energy or where your husband fell asleep with a baseball game humming on the TV, you will show them the door. If you are lonely, you will go to the diner. You will clap for a child whose name you don't know. You will sign up for the library's mystery book club and argue about endings as if it matters, because it does. You will remember that you are not a problem to be solved. You are a person. Love, Ruth. I folded it and put it in the drawer and told Joni where I put it. Then I told Denise and Mr. Patel and Pastor Lorraine, because women my age have learned that secrets help no one, except men who lock doors behind them. I told my doctor, too, and she nodded and wrote a big note in my chart. Patient prefers to make her own decisions. Please speak to patient, not to whoever answers her phone. I think of my husband sometimes, the way he used to feed squirrels peanuts with that ridiculous patient gentleness he reserved for skittish things. He died on a Tuesday, and it was exactly as quiet as you hope it is for a good man who leaves in his sleep. He would have been furious and also practical if he'd seen Kelsey's plan. He would have said, "That's not right." Then he would have gotten in the truck. He would like to know that I called the people I called, and that the deputy was respectful, and that the judge had the good sense to see through the shine. He would like to know that the tomatoes came in red, fat with summer. On mornings when the light hits the kitchen table just so, I slice those tomatoes and shake salt on them and stand there at the sink and eat them like an animal, juice on my wrist, and I think, I get to eat my own tomatoes in my own kitchen, in my own house. If you have never had your own house threatened, it might sound small. It is not. It is as big as a person. It is as big as a name on a deed and a mailbox on a post and a key that scratches slightly before the deadbolt slides and the world says, you belong here.
I went to the Maple Glen Public Schools Foundation office with a check one afternoon because I'm from a generation that believes in checks even when the world wants you to Venmo your soul. The woman behind the desk looked like a kindergarten teacher who had moved into a desk chair. "We have some lunch balances," she said, as if she were reporting on a minor plumbing problem. "How many?" I asked. She told me. It was a number that feels like shame more than math. I handed her the check. "Apply it to anyone who has a parent who works late or who pays cash for everything because they've been burned or who just looks like they could use a break," I said. "Do not tell them who did it. Tell them they're paid up. Tell them to get the milk, too. She dabbed at her eyes. I dabbed at mine. We are a sentimental county. We cry and we fix a little. I walked out to my car with the kind of lightness that comes from directed anger. Channeled, as the self-help books say, which is just a fancy way of saying useful at last. At the senior center, Earl called the steps and I missed a turn and laughed. And an 80-year-old woman in an Elvis t-shirt told me, "You're fine, honey," which is the highest praise I've gotten in a while. At the diner, the waitress started bringing my coffee the minute I sat down because good waitresses remember who eats what, like it's Sunday school. At church, Pastor Lorraine preached about the Good Samaritan, and for once, she didn't skip the part where the injured man said nothing, because he didn't have to. The story is his body. The story was mine, too. Sometimes you'll hear women my age tell a story that sounds like a cautionary tale and then ends like a Hallmark movie. That is not this story. This story ends with my porch light, which turns on at dusk whether I am home or not. It ends with a key that clicks, with a bank teller who raises an eyebrow when someone too smooth shows up with a smile and a plan, with a deputy who doesn't confuse kindness with weakness, with a judge who knows the difference between frail and female. It ends with a niece who might grow up, though pain is a teacher, though not one I hired. It ends with a freezer with meatloaf in it, and a neighbor with the key that isn't under a fake rock, but in her sensible pocket. It ends with me, a woman who teaches her own body new tricks, stronger passwords, steadier stance, saying no like a blessing. If you ask me what safety looks like, I will tell you about the afternoon the wind nudged my porch swing and my neighbor's boy rode his bike too fast and didn't fall, and I laugh for the pure joy of it. I will tell you about the day I signed my name to my own choices and watched the ink dry. I will tell you about the doorbell camera blinking its quiet blue eye and me blinking mine back, each of us witnesses to the other. People talk about aging as if it is a thief in the night. Sometimes it is a locksmith instead, come to make sure the mechanisms still work, to teach you how to turn toward your own dignity. Kelsey texted me last week that she got a job at a call center in the city, and I told her I hope she wore comfortable shoes. She said her therapist sees her Thursdays at 6 and that she is learning to name the part of her that wants to control and disguise it as care. I told her that sounded like a thing I could clap for from my porch. She sent me a heart. I sent her a heart back. I do not mistake shapes for transformation anymore. 6 months is not a threat. It is a boundary with a calendar attached. November will come no matter what we do. If she shows up with proof of herself, we will sip coffee outside under the thrift store blanket and talk about weather and treat it like a miracle. Until then, I have tomatoes and a red chair and a Thursday night two-step to practice. I have a letter to myself in the drawer with tape and scissors and bills. I have the number for Denise and Mr. Patel and the deputy, and my doctor has a note in her chart in big letters. I have a trust document that leaves my house to a fund that wipes off lunchroom debts like erasing chalkboard math. And when the foundation sends a letter that says, "Your gift made a difference," I'll put it on my refrigerator with the sticky note that says no, and smile at how, from a certain angle, they look like the same word. Love without boundaries is not love. It is leverage. If you are a woman of a certain age, you learn this the long way or the longer one. I learned it standing in my kitchen with a letter in my hand and banana bread on the counter and my niece at the door with a smile that had the wrong kind of math in it. I learned it again in a courtroom under a portrait of a man in a powdered wig. I learn it every Thursday when I close my front door and feel the deadbolt slide and know, deep in the old bones of this house and the kneecap that aches when it rains, that I get to decide who gets to knock, and when I'm home, and when I turn out the light,